In this video, I will demonstrate how to use a variety of stilts when glazing your ceramic pieces. If you don't glaze the bottom of your piece, you don't have to use a stilt. I think some people feel like their piece doesn't look finished if they leave the bottom bare, but I think this bowl looks great, for example. If you do glaze the bottom of things, be sure to fire those things separately. Pieces that touch one another in the kiln can get fused together. This piece here, the lid is fused to the base. Or your piece can get stuck to the kiln shelf and have to be chiseled off. But even if you don't glaze the bottom, the glaze might run, so stop the glaze about 1/4 of an inch from the base of your piece or use wax resist on the bottom. And always wipe your bottom. Make sure it's clean and free from any glaze. If you do have glaze on the bottom of your piece, you can prop it up using stilts. This is a non-metal ceramic stilt. I don't use these for glaze because it will stick. You want to use these for propping up leather hard pieces, for example, to dry it evenly, or in a bisque fire, you can make sure your piece heats evenly on these. For glaze, you'll use stilts that have metal points. Stilts with more points help evenly disperse more weight, so use these for your heavier pieces. If you have metal points that have started to bend, which they do bend at higher temperatures, especially under heavy pieces, you can use pliers to straighten them. If you have a stilt where the prong has completely broken off, I don't know any way that it can be fixed, so we discard it. It is important to make sure you're picking the right sized stilt for your piece as well. This stilt, for example, is too big for this piece. You can see that it's actually sitting in between the metal points on the ceramic center of the stilt. So it would fuse to that part when fired. Instead, you want to balance your piece on the metal points of the stilt without it touching the center, and it should feel secure and not have too much wobble. You also don't want to use a stilt that's too small. Using a small size stilt on a piece like this, even if I could get it to balance, it could still fall over during the firing and get fused to the neighboring piece. Make sure the size of the stilt is appropriate for your piece. The stilts that look like this with the longer metal point in the center are great for pieces that are top heavy, and you need to support it from the inside as it balances. This style of stilt is good for pieces that have overhangs like lids. We'll just pretend that this is a lid, and you want to have it hang over the stilt without touching the kiln shelf. Same with a piece like this that has feet. You can use one of these stilts in between the feet to have it propped up without the bottom of the feet touching the shelf. If your piece has a foot ring, and this is not the best example because this ring doesn't actually have glaze, so it wouldn't need a stilt, but if it was glazed, you want to place the metal points on the inside of the ring, if it's a thin ring like this one, and make sure that you don't have one or more of the metal points on the ring and one or more in the center. Make sure all the points are on the same plane in your piece. These long stilts are called linear stilts. You'll frequently see these stilts being used for spoons. For a piece like this, you can have it straddle across the stilts. These stilts do come in various heights, so you might want to make sure they match, especially if you want to use them for, say, smaller pieces. Though sometimes the pieces fall in between the points and get fused to the stilt like you can see here. So maybe a better way to prop up small pieces is to place some 3-pointed stilts like this, almost like a puzzle. And then you can balance the smaller pieces on top of 2 stilts at once. Taller objects might still fall though, so this piece is better balanced across the linear stilts. And for an object like this, I would also use the linear stilts. For this piece, which doesn't have a flat base and the weight is off center, you can use these single nail stilts. Because they're singletons, you can place them where you want, but I do suggest using at least 3. And you can add more until the weight is equally distributed and the piece feels sturdy. For this piece, you can use the nails for the body and then another nail for the tail as well. Other stilt types that I just don't have to demo here are circle stilts for pieces with round bottoms like pots, bowls, plates, a bead rack, and a jewelry or ornament stilt. And there are lots of YouTube videos on how you can make your own stilts. At the end of the glaze firing, you'll gently pop the stilts off your piece. The metal points do leave little marks on the bottom. I suggest keeping the glaze thin on the bottom of your pieces so that you might not even notice these marks. You can take a piece of sandpaper or a stilt stone to file down these marks. And my last piece of advice is to also sand the bottom of your bare pieces as well so that you don't scratch your mom's favorite coffee table. So that is how you use stilts to hold up your pieces with glaze on the bottom during a glaze fire.